right, so I've had a few requests on what I did to relocate the factory fender flare, so I'll go over some of the pros and some of the cons. This side here I actually finished last night before I got asked to do a video. So what we're working with is a 99 Jeep Cherokee Sport 4-liter. When I picked this rig up, it had been sitting since 2015. So far what I've done is a Rubicon Express 3.5-inch lift with the coil spacers. We've got Rubicon Express rear leafs. I did do the no lift shackle, and I've got a 2-inch lift shackle in the rear here so I could get the correct geometry on the shackle angle there. It's got all brand new injectors, brand new brake lines, brand new brakes. This thing was in pretty rough shape when I got it. So, I kind of basically started from scratch with this thing. It's sitting on BF TA 3310.5s. Didn't really want to go with a 12-inch wide tire. Just my personal opinion. I kind of like the look of the 10.5 instead of the 12.5. So as you can see here, this is where the factory flares were at. I can get you a little bit of a measurement here to show you what kind of gain we got. So it looks like we're sitting, right about 7.5 inches, and then on the rear right about 7 inches. And so what we did, and I'll show you here later in this video, is moving the flare up did require cutting the sheet metal. It does keep the original flare, but does change it a little bit. You're going to end up with a little bit of a gap here, and then the body line doesn't fit. It's not terrible on the rear, but what's nice about the rear is you can actually get it to tuck up pretty close to this body line here without it actually hitting the door. So you can't go up as far on the rear as you can on the front. So I think we were sitting at 7 inches on the other side there, and now we're about 7.5 inches or so. And then on the front, we're about 9.25 inches. So that's where the most gain comes from. And as you can see too here, we're almost at the body line. Where this side, we're quite a ways down from the body line there. So, I think overall, I've been pretty happy with it. It does open it up quite a bit. I actually did move the axle a little bit further forward as well too. And actually, from the original location from where it was at, the springs were actually kind of bent backwards and touching the bump stop post. So adjusted for caster and for pinion angle, got the best that I could. I did do some trimming here. I actually got these brand new off carparts.com. All I ended up doing was basically kind of mimicking this line here. I'll probably put a little Christmas tree or something in there, mimicking that line there. And I'll show you, as opposed to the other side, it kind of rolls back on that lip there. I'm not quite sure on this. I've seen a lot of guys have issues where this was cutting into the tire. So I'll do some flex tests later and decide to see if I'm gonna have to cut in between these pinch welds here and go ahead and fold that back. So yeah, that's kind of what I got. Kind of like the look of it. Like I said, definitely opens up the wheel well. Definitely makes the lift feel a lot larger. So I will get to the part of the editing where I show you what I do. So one of the first things you're gonna need to get done, remove the inner fender well, held in there with a couple Christmas tree adapters. There are 10mm bolts behind here that you will need to take out or back up inside of here. Those can be a little rusty. Sometimes they snap off. Luckily on the other side I didn't have any issues. They came off. There are some videos online that you could look up if you do have to replace those. I think you can get them from Quadratech if you just want to buy them new for about 130 bucks. And it's like an 8-piece. There's 2 individual brackets behind here for each flare. So what I'll do is I'll get this fender flare removed, probably get some PB blast on all these bolts here on the fender flares. Let that soak for a bit just to make sure I don't break any of those, because not really looking to make a bunch of trips to the store trying to figure all this out. So that part should be pretty straightforward. So I'll get that part done, and I'll see you back here in a few. All right, now that I got that off, I don't know if you saw in the time lapse, but man, does that thing hold a ton of dirt down in there. I did snap 2 bolts off, one up in the front, one in the back. What I ended up doing is cutting inside this body line and basically just cutting right on this edge, just above these holes here. Not super concerned about where the current holes are at, because I'm actually gonna hold the fender up there with the bracket on. So, you know, I just keep it assembled like this. And I'll hold this back up there, and I'll use a marker to kind of trace out the holes. And when I drew the holes, I kind of oversized them a little bit too. So those holes are going to be, you know, up on this flat part of the fender up in here, you know, about up here. I do oversize the holes a little bit. It does give me a little bit of room to move back and forth and up and down, which is why I think I kind of like that route. Getting the geometry, you know, if you just wanted to go straight up, it's not necessarily that we're just going straight up. I'm actually going up and back a little bit. So I don't want to try and do some kind of measurement based off of these holes and take the guesswork. So what I found was the easiest, at least for the other side, was just to bolt all this back in and hold that fender up against the body. So I'll show you a clip of the other side here, and I'll get that rear flare removed. This one here, I believe the inner fender bolts that actually hold the fender on are underneath this skirt. I'll have to take a peek at that again. I thought the bolts on the other side actually held that skirt in, but so yeah, the bolts actually come through this little plastic flare that sits in the inside here. So I'll get that one removed. PP blast and probably let those ones sit so I don't break. And if you remember from the other side, you know, we're not gaining a ton in the back. You know, we can only come up so far. I guess if you wanted to do something extreme and, you know, cut this piece and then somehow mount it to the door and move this thing up, I mean, I guess you could do something like that. I'm not super worried about the rear. The rear's tucked pretty good. There'll be bump stopped out, so not super concerned about that part. So let me get to it. This is kind of where I ended up at. Like I said, I'm going to go back after I ground that down. I was going to cut it with the Sawzall originally, but that sheet metal there is super thin, and I didn't want to have the Sawzall blade catch and buckle or bend that metal. So I'm sure the cutoff wheel generating heat underneath that paint probably isn't the best in the world, but you know, it's what I got. So made that cut back there, went back, grounded it down. So the next step will be I'm gonna knock those screws out that I broke, replace those, and then I'll hold that thing up there, kind of decide where I want it based off some other side measurements, and then make those marks, and then I'll cut those holes and we'll get that thing on there. Last time we were out in the snow, I was catching this lower dam. So I actually, on this side, I actually just cut it off. Kind of came in here with a little bit of a swoop, brought that up, cut that back. So this actually matches up now with that flare. If this would have been left, you know, there was probably a 1/4 inch or so, and it was sticking past the fender. So that cut there kind of helped line that fender up. So for this part, you're gonna get your bracket reinstalled. It just so happens that a painter's cap is about the height that I want on this bracket here. So basically what you're gonna do, set your flare back down on there. You know, you're gonna have to figure out where you want it. You know, obviously I know I'm about at the body line. And then what you're gonna do is just rest those bolts up against the body. And you're gonna reach in from underneath or on top, or with a scribe, and just scribe a little mark where you want those holes to be. And like I said, I'm actually oversizing the holes a little bit, so it gives me a little bit of room to go over, up, down, up, and around. All right, now that I got all the holes drilled, you can really see them down in there. Just getting everything test fitted. On this back one, I do flex the flare back a little bit and kind of widen it. So you do end up with a couple, like 2 little dimples right here in the middle. But to clear this gap and this fender line here, you got to pull that back a little bit. So I'm just going to pull this off here so you can take a look at all the holes. And that's what that looks like. So yeah, now I'm just going to put the bolts on, get everything all test fitted, and make some modifications to this part here because it hangs over on the inside lip there. So I'm basically going to come and cut this part down. So I'm going to come and take this part here and make it straight down. And this you're just going to have to play with to get it to match up with this body line here. A little bit at a time. Maybe try to make some marks on it from the inside or scribe it or something before you fully commit to doing that. But yeah, let me get this all bolted up and cut, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, there it is after it's all bolted up. Made a couple cuts here. I just got to sink a bolt in here. I think what I'm going to end up doing is probably running a self-tapper or a bolt, maybe a black bolt up, and then that way I can suck this in a little bit more, and I'll come back and clean this little part up here. But yeah, you're just left with that gap through there, unfortunately. But other than that, that's what it looks like. And it gives you about 2 inches of additional lift on the factory flare. All right, got a little dark, had to take a break. Once you get the inner fender screws out, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically what you got to do, same concept as the front. And you just got to get it lifted up to about where you want it. And then you're going to mark out where the studs are. In this case, these ones just happen to be right where the body pinch weld was at. So the drill bit jumped on a couple of those ones, but once that paint dries and I get that fender back in there, it's gonna have a nice tight line right here at the body. Like I said, it doesn't raise it too much in the back, unfortunately, but I don't think I need that much room. If I have to, I can come back here and cut and fold that a little bit if I need to. So, all right, now that we got all those holes drilled and painted, go ahead and give this thing a test fit. Get it in there. So as I said, you know, why you want to do those holes oversized is it gives you the ability to move this thing around a little bit. Looks like we got good fit on the door here. And once that gets all sucked in, cut the bottom. Just go ahead and tighten it up and put that inner fender liner back in there, and we're all done. All right, it is the next morning. Just kind of giving you a look now that I'm all done. These do fit, you know, pretty tight. Like I said, the only thing you got, a little bit of a gap here. Not so bad of a gap in the rear. It does come up nice and fit the body line here, which is the part that I like. The damage that was here prior to me buying this. This one actually looks like it's up a little bit higher on this side, so I might be able to go to the other side since those holes are oversized and move that up and kind of match those out. But yeah, so that is the flare lift on the XJ. I'll try and give you a decent side shot here. And I'll have to go do some tuck tests and like I was saying earlier, check that inner pinch weld and see if I'm gonna have to hammer that back and fold that. But yeah, for now, pretty happy with the way that came out. Still has that stock look, a lot of clearance, and yep, appreciate it. See you guys.